Hi, I'm Bruce Eckel,
I'm James Ward.
and this is First Steps in Flex. This is the Containers chapter. So, I have to say, so far in this book, I have not been really blown away by the layout of things, and I'm hoping we can tune that up a little bit.
Yeah, we've left things pretty basic, but in real applications, layouts are usually much more complex than we've shown so far.
Okay, so mostly we've just been removing the default absolute and getting the vertical layout, and so we've ended up with components that have been positioned like in the middle from top to bottom. And yeah, I mean that's been working for our simple examples, but it would be interesting to look at some other containers since there's a lot of them, right?
There are.
Okay.
Yeah, there's out of the box in Flex. There's a number of containers. You can find a good list of those in First Step in Tour Day Flex at flex.org/tour. And there's a number. We're going to just talk about a few of them here now.
And it's also possible to make your own containers, right?
Absolutely.
And
yeah,
so I assume that there's a bunch of free ones on the web.
Right, yep, there's free ones on the web. You can write your own completely from scratch. There's some interfaces that you can implement, some base classes you can extend.
And do people sell containers too? Is that
Not that I'm aware of. I mean,
okay?
someone certainly could if they built something really complex, but as far as I know today, most of the containers are either in the Flux SDK or just on people's blogs.
Okay, well maybe we could look at what we have been seeing just to make it clear what we're starting from.
Yeah. Containers. So let's make a new Flex project called Containers. Whoops, and I did that one as an air project. Let's go back. It could be an air project, but that's not the way we did it in the book. So we will create this again. And this time select to be a web application. There we go. Okay, so here we go. So what we've been doing in the book so far is removing this layout absolute. And that puts us into the vertical layout. So let's see what the vertical layout looks like. So an application is a container. You could verify that by going into the ASDoc for application and seeing that application extends from layout container, which extends from container, our base container class. If we go into container, we could see all the different components in the Flex SDK that extend from container eventually. So there's many different ones, such as box, which has VBox, HBox, grid, divided box, a number of containers. So there's quite a few containers in this whole hierarchy of containers. So we're in application, the application container. We're going to add two buttons. First one,
three actually.
Three buttons. First one, we're going to give a label of top. Then let's add another one, label of middle. And then one for bottom. Okay, so we haven't set really any positioning parameters on these. So what it's going to do is just use the default layout in application, the application container, and then the buttons will be positioned in their default position. So when we run this, here we get our three buttons, top, middle, and bottom, just aligned vertically, aligned to the horizontal middle. And then starting at the top with some padding at the top and some padding between each one.
And I assume we can change all that padding.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if we want to change the vertical gap between these, we could change this to, let's say, 50. And now that's going to put 50 pixels between each button. So there's lots of different parameters to customize the layout, the layouts that we're using here. So that's the default if we don't specify that. Essentially what that's doing is setting layout to vertical.
So how about if we try putting an explicit container in our application?
Yeah, so obviously, application itself is a container, but there are other container classes that are used more frequently because you can only have one application container in an application. So we have things like a VBox. So a VBox is essentially a container that uses the vertical layout. So let's put in our VBox, and then we're going to move those buttons inside of our VBox. And then let's also add on top of our VBox another button, and whoops, button. Give it a label of above, and then below our VBox, let's add another button with a label of below. So now when we do this, what we're having is our main container has a button and a VBox and another button. So in containers you can put components like buttons, or you can put other containers. You can nest containers within containers within containers. So that's what we have going on here. So if we go look at this application, there we get our top container, our top level container, which contains our above button and our below button, and then our VBox, which contains 3 buttons inside of that.
Okay. And I assume we could also make them horizontal.
That's right. So the HBox is the container that uses the horizontal layout. And when we do that and reload it, now we see what's happening is that we have a container that contains those 3 buttons, laying them out horizontally, and then the above and below in the top level container.
Okay. Now, previously we've been removing the absolute tag on the application. What happens if we put it back on and force the buttons to be in particular places?
Yep. So the third layout option here is absolute. So in the absolute layout, what we're going to do is we're going to position the items within this container using either X and Y coordinates and width and heights or constraints. So first let's cover the X and Y use cases. So let's make this button say top left, and then we're going to set the X position equal to 0 and the Y position equal to 0. And I should mention these coordinates start in the top left corner, so 0, 0 is up in the top left. Then let's have another button. This button will give a label of, let's see, what's our next one down? Center. So for center, we're going to use the X equals Y, X equals 0 position, and then we're going to use a constraint. We're going to constrain this thing to the horizontal center equals 0. So that'll be 0 pixels. The center of this component will be 0 pixels from the horizontal center. Okay, and then, and this was top left, there we go, center, and then let's do bottom right. And in bottom right, we'll constrain this to the right edge, so 0 pixels. The right edge of this component will be 0 pixels from the right edge of the application container, and the bottom edge will be 0 pixels from the bottom edge of the application container.
Actually, the middle one's set vertical center.
Yep. Okay. Right. So we
vertical center equals 0.
Right. Okay. Typo on my part here. We do horizontal center equals 0 and vertical center equals 0. So there's you can use X and Y. You can also use left, right, top, bottom, horizontal center, and vertical center as being the constraints that we can position things in the absolute layout. So let's see how this looks. So there we go. We have our top left, center, and bottom right.
Now what happens if you resize the browser window?
So constraints will still apply no matter what the size of the container. So that's one of the nice things about constraint-based layout rather than using X and Y positions, is that when we do resize things, when things move, they will still stay constrained. So, and that would be, right here we're using X and Y. We could replace X and Y with left equals 0 and top equals 0 to use the constraints rather than X and Y. They'll have the same behavior in this case, but there may be times when X and Y are not the same as left 0 and top 0.
Okay. So those seem okay, but there must be some more exciting
There definitely
containers.
is. Yeah, so some of the other containers that you can use are like tabs. accordions, H divided box, V divided box. So there's some of these containers that allow you to have some more interesting user interactions for sure. So which one of those should we look at?
Well, tabs and accordions sound kind of interesting.
Okay, so let's take a look at the Tab Navigator. So Tab Navigator, you can use tabs in two ways. You can use a tab bar and manually control what happens when the user selects tabs, or you can use the Tab Navigator, which is actually a container. So for Tab Navigator, let's set some properties on it with equals 300 and height equals 200. So that's our Tab Navigator. Let's also go back to the layout vertical, default layout vertical there. Okay, so now inside of our Tab Navigator, we're just going to add some other containers. So the first one, let's add a canvas. So canvas is the absolute layout container. Label equals 1. And then let's add another canvas. Label equals 2. So this is going to show up in our Tab Navigator. We're going to have two tabs, and it's going to use the labels of the children in the Tab Navigator to determine what to display in those tabs. So that's our Tab Navigator. Now let's add an accordion. Accordions are also fun. Let's set the width to 300 and the height to 200, just like the Tab Navigator. And let's copy and paste these canvas containers and replace these labels with 3 and 4. So again, like the Tab Navigator, the accordion is going to use these labels in the children containers to determine what to display on the accordion panes. So let's save that and go take a look at what we have. So here's the Tab Navigator. So here we get this tabbing system between those, and then here's the accordion where we can flip back and forth in those accordion values. So, and one of the interesting things that you'll see happening here, which is a cool thing about Flex, is that when we actually change back and forth between these tabs, it's actually tracking that information in the URL by default. We can turn that off and customize it. But the cool thing is that now that it's tracking that information in the URL, I can hit back and it will toggle back and forth. So I can go back and forth in my browser. Even if I reload this page, it still should go back and select. Oh, let's try that again. Should go back and select. For some reason, it's not working. I must have done something wrong. But it should go back and select the tab that we selected in the application when we hit reload. So pretty cool little integration there with back and forward and bookmarking of these URLs, just supported by default in some of these containers.
So can you put containers within containers?
Yeah, definitely. So this is putting containers within containers, but we don't really have anything in this case inside of these canvases. So let's build an example now where we're going to do a little bit more with these containers. So here we've got our canvas. Let's open this canvas up, and so now let's put some stuff inside of this canvas. So let's set some properties first on this canvas. We're going to set the width to 100% and the height to 100%. So that canvas will take up its fully available space. Let's add a button inside of this canvas. We'll give this a label of bottom center. And now let's position it on the bottom center. So that's going to be horizontal center equals 0 and bottom equals 0. So that's something inside of that canvas container that's within inside of the first tab on the Tab Navigator. Now let's do a similar thing here for the second container. Let's copy and paste that button. And now on this button, let's call this one middle left, and set the properties vertical center equals 0 and left equals 0. So that's going to put that button in the middle left position of this canvas, and let's also make sure that our canvas is set to take up all the available space. So now on our accordion, let's do similar things here. In our canvas number 3, let's set that to width 100%, and same thing on number 4. We're just going to open these up just like we did before, and let's then add some buttons into these as well. So I'm just adding some elements here into these containers. These could also be additional containers, so we can just go as deeply as we want into adding these. So let's go on this first one. First button, let's call this one middle right offset. So we're going to do vertical center of -25. So this is going to be 25 pixels left of the vertical center. And then let's do right equals 50. So we're going to be, vertical center would align this 25 pixels up from the vertical center, not the horizontal center is the one that goes longitudinally, right? Horizontal center is the one that goes latitude. So this one will be 25 pixels up and 50 pixels from the right edge. And then the bottom, this one will be, let's do, for this one, middle right offset. Do we just do middle right offset?
Oh, they're both
the same in the book. Okay, well then let's just copy and paste that. So same stuff for both of these. And let's go reload and see how it looks. So here we go. We've got these buttons inside of the canvases that are within these controls. So when we flip back and forth between these, we see those different canvases. And this one, those are positioned the same within those canvases. So we get those.
All right.
So that is containers within containers, or components within containers within containers within containers.
And there's some further learning on First Steps in Flex.com.
Or in the book.
Yep.
And on firststepsinflex.com.
Indeed.